Well. Hello. Good to be back. Ah, I'm going to share with you bit of my story of addiction to recovery and how it is similar to money and a relationship with money. I'll get into it. And everything that I am saying about addiction and recovery, for the most part, is my experience. Okay. So this is in no form, any sort of recovery program or anything. It's just me bringing my experience to you and also being able to tie the dots and make the connections of how this also correlates to money, the wounds with money, and healing the relationship with money. So have no fear. Got to face the fear. And of course, repair is near. I love that title. Came up with that myself. Thank you very much. So there was a time in my life, though, that alcohol was a form of my escape. It was how I was coping with life. It was what I did to get by. It was what I did when I was happy, when I was sad, when I was anxious, always there celebrating. It's a big part of life. And um, that's what I did, right? Especially as a person or woman who has experienced violence, domestic violence, and I was in a relationship, and that's what was really peaking. So I was really actively using the substance of alcohol to numb out, to cope, and do the best that I could with what I was dealing with, and it worked until it didn't work anymore. Okay, and I was also the same at that time with money. So I had this relationship with money. It was, I would spend it, I'd go into debt, I would get worried, I would pay it off, I would spend it, worry. It was just this cycle. Okay. It was something that I did when I wanted to feel better. I'd go to the store and I'd buy something, more than one thing. I was angry and I would get back at my ex by racking up debt on that credit card. Or I would spend when I was bored because I didn't know how to sit with these difficult emotions that I was experiencing. And they were difficult for me because I didn't grow up in an environment where I was, taught about my emotions. There was no space for them. I had to really just swallow them and act like everything was okay. So I didn't have the tools or even I didn't even have an awareness of what was going on. It was just survival. It's life as I knew it. So there's different types of addictions, right? And they can translate into different things. So for me, like I said alcohol and money, and other forms of addictions could be in the form of food, sugar. Kind of working on that one for myself right now. Ways of thinking. We could be addicted to a way of thinking, addicted to experiences in relationship, or friendships. Again, there's just so many different ways that it can show up. Gambling. I mean, there's so much, right? It's just part of our human nature that these addictions come up. And not for all, though. It is exacerbated for those of us that have experienced trauma, which most of us have at some point in our life. The great thing is that we can recover from any type of addiction. Okay, we really can, uh, in all areas of life. And I want to share with you on how you can tell if you're struggling with any form of addiction, whether it's any of the ones that I mentioned or something different. First, the insanity. So, gotta identify the insanity. And what do I think? What am I saying about that? So, the insanity for one would be magical thinking. Magical thinking for me, when I was using alcohol to escape and abusing it, right? My magical thinking was that I'd be able to stop. First, let me get a calendar and mark the days that I've had a drink and how many drinks and keep track. And then I'll improve it next week and I'll go less. And then I would create this and have check marks on my calendar for how many drinks I had. And then I would get to the next week and I'd look back and be like, nothing changed. Okay, I'm going to change it. Maybe I'm just going to have 2 drinks tonight, and then tomorrow I'll leave the bottle there and then I'll have 1 drink and I'll start, going less. Okay. And that was one version of my insanity. Okay. When I was, before I got into recovery, right? Of trying to stop drinking on my own. And it's that magical thinking, because I had the proof right in front of me that it wasn't working. But yet I kept thinking it would. The other part is the sign is, emotional chaos. And that can show up as restlessness, anger, shame, fear, guilt. Even when I wasn't drinking, my mind would be scattered and I'd be anxious and obsessed over the next time I could have a drink to help me. The next time I could do something like that to get my mind off of things. I didn't have the ability to have peace with alcohol, right? And I knew it was bad for me. But it was just it was just this chaos inside that I kept experiencing. And then also risk, right? Putting myself into situations where drinking could override my common sense. And it actually did. Totally did. Uh, and that could be putting myself in risk of losing my job, putting my health at risk, my relationships at risk. I knew that it was destructive. Okay. I knew that because I could feel it. Maybe I didn't want to admit it, right? And I was still doing it anyway, against my own will. Okay. So as I'm describing this, the insanity, the emotional chaos, and the risk, consider, where is that with money in your life? Okay. Where is the insanity when money with your life when it comes to spending? And like an example could be like, I'm only going to spend this much when I go to this store. I'm not going to spend all of my, I got paid. I'm not going to spend all my money. Here's what I'm going to do to make sure I don't spend all my money. And then you spend everything, because you're out and about and you're buying things or something, right? And you keep trying. And then the risk, consider the risk financially that may be occurring with money. For me, I was putting my family at financial risk because I kept putting us in debt. And if I needed to have access to capital or credit or loans, we weren't in a situation to do that because I kept putting us in debt, even though I knew, right? I knew it was still happening. Okay. And then also just consider, like I said, the emotional chaos that you're experiencing with your financial situation and money, and you're wanting to change these behaviors, and you're feeling that shame, you're feeling the guilt, the anger, the resentment, all those things, right? So there's some similarities here, and I wanted to be able to show this to you so you can begin to think about how this may be happening for you financially. And there's also one that I do want to talk about too, is the signs of unmanageability. So what I'm speaking of, I'll give the example of I wasn't able to manage my emotions inside, right? But nobody else knew what was going on. It wasn't to a place where other people could see, really. But then over time, as my drinking got worse and as life got harder, because I was going through a really hard time, that unmanageability started showing up outside of me. How? I was irritable. I lost everything. I lost my home. I couldn't perform well at work. Okay. The external signs that were showing up that weren't there before, because I had it all together before. Maybe on the outside, again, like I said, but not on the inside. So when I'm saying that in relation to money, right, where are the signs of the unmanageability showing up externally? If it has happened or it hasn't, is it just internal for you right now, the manageability of how you're experiencing and walking through your day, and yet everyone and everybody thinks everything is A-okay, but really deep inside you're just a hot mess and falling apart, but nobody knows. That's not manageable, okay? So again, think about what I was talking about with the insanity, right? It's chaotic, it's self-destructive mental state. It could be tied to drinking or money, and you're trying to quit, trying to change things, right? All this insanity for me when it came to drinking was happening before I had structure, fellowship, and tools. For me, that was AA. And that program helped me find stability. I had the structure of going to meetings. I had a community fellowship, right, of people that were just like me, and also people that women predominantly, because I wanted to be in rooms with women. It felt safer for me, and I could identify with them. And that program, that process helped me create a new life, a new way of thinking, a new way of being, the way that I truly desired. I just couldn't do it on my own. So, all right, great, Leah, you shared all this with me. Now, what the heck do I do for myself? Okay, what can I do? All right, first thing, face your fear with rigorous honesty. Okay, so with your angst or worry or stress about how you're handling your money, right? It's being able to, first of all, admit it, right? And not just in your mind, but even if it starts with writing it out, it could be in conversation with somebody that can hold a container for you without shame and judgment. It could be a therapist, it could be a good friend, family member, pastor, somebody where you can have that conversation with. But most importantly, that rigorous honesty starts with yourself first. And that is not easy. Nobody, this is what they say in AA, walks into the rooms of AA with their life all together, happy that they're there. No. But the thing is different when it comes to money, because if you haven't got to a point where your life has fallen apart with it, right, you can actually feel really good stepping into a space where you're going to start talking about it. It could bring a sense of relief. Okay. Or even if that's the case, right, maybe you don't want to be there having that conversation, but you're willing to have that conversation. It's that willingness and rigorous honesty. That is the first most important step. Okay. Because without honesty, it's just like, I mean, how can anything get done? How can anything change? It's just a state of denial. And when we're in a state of denial, well, things are going to stay the same or get worse. The second thing is to have support, right? And the tools. So you can do this alone, right? If you've been in that cycle of insanity with your financial situation, with how you're spending your money or using your money or working with your money, if you're in this conversation, identify in some way with what I'm talking about with that insanity, you could definitely do it on your own. You could change everything on your own. It'll likely be more painful though. Just like a lot of people that I've met over the years who have stopped using substances on their own, they've stopped, right? But it's harder. For some people, it's not too, though. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's people out there that stop and everything's great. It just really depends on the level of where they're at and and how it showed up in their life, that substance or whatever. But you can do it alone. The thing is, if you do it alone and you notice that you're still irritable, scared, angry, resentful, and nothing is going right. Okay, that's what we call in the AA program. When I was going, I don't anymore. It's a great program. It created the foundation in my life today. I'm not knocking it. It's a wonderful program, but they would call that someone who's like a dry drunk. So a dry drunk is somebody who's stopped drinking the alcohol, but it's still showing up. The behaviors, the thinking, the decisions they're making, how they're showing up in life, they're still miserable. They're still in the chaos. Things are not working out. Okay. So it's so important to notice that if you're doing something on your own and you're still experiencing that, if you're like, I'm going to handle this whole financial situation and what I'm going to do next with my money on my own, and you're got all those kind of feels that I just mentioned, pay attention to that. Or you could go and get support. You could find a community. You could find people, whether it's a group, a spiritual community, a community of like-minded professional women, or a community of women who are, breaking the generational cycle of poverty and trauma in their home, and they're all coming together and sharing and working together and being in community and loving on each other and supporting each other and truly being there for each other in a space, in a container where it's safe and everyone can show up bravely, because there's something so powerful. And I didn't know this or truly recognize it until I was in AA, when I was hearing stories and seeing women, they had something that I wanted. They had something in their, I was like, what is that? I was so intrigued, never seen it before. I knew I wanted it. And they would share their experiences coming from a place of pride, those that had been in the program for a while and their lives had transformed, right? Because they changed their thinking, their life, and all of that by removing the substance from their life and working the program. It's the same thing that I'm talking about right now. So if you have a community that you're around and there's let me give the example of women, right? And they have the life that you desire. They're walking in the world the way that you want. They're saying the things that you're like, wow, that is just like moving me. It's touching me. It's like, wow, I want that. How do I get that? That's where you want to be. Okay. Because when you surround yourself with that type of community, we've heard this before. I think it's like we're the reflection of the 5 or 7 people around us or something like that. Anyway, we are who we hang out with. And if you can't find that community in person and you can't find it virtually, get the community through books. Get it through what you're reading, what you're listening to, those that is still being in the vibrational field of people that you want to be like. And their words, their wisdom, their guidance will support you. And it'll start putting that in your mind and how you're approaching the world. And you'll start hearing the things that they're saying throughout your day, right? So it's so important to be able to do that. Find your people. And really, again, just show up. Just keep showing up. It's this journey, it goes up and down. And when you're on it and you're working on changing your life, and money has been a topic that is something that is very sensitive and you've had a lot of shame around it, and you're working on it. The things that you initially started to like working on the journey will show up in other ways throughout your life, professionally, or if you're a business owner or other ways. It still happens to me to this day. And I'm like, interesting. I'm experiencing a little bit of fear right here. What is that about? But the thing is when it's like, I'll give this other example. So healing from domestic violence. This is what I've learned as an advocate. Um, when you remove yourself from the situation, okay, and you're no longer in that environment, and you also add on healing modalities, and those healing modalities are therapy or spirituality or whatever they are for you, you add those in and surround yourself with people, you're now really on that healing journey, because you're no longer exposed. You're no longer exposed to the pain, the trauma. Okay. And the same thing goes for financially. When you remove yourself from the situations or behaviors or things that were causing the pain, and you on top of that add the spirituality, the groups of support, the exercise, the whatever, the things to pour into yourself, you're really starting on that healing journey. That's where the healing begins. It starts with removing the thing that is causing the pain. And it takes courage. And courage, as I say, because I got that from, oh my gosh, just dropping, I forget his name. He's an author. I'll remember another time. Anyway, that's what he says in his book. I wish I remembered how courage is the starting point of transformation. So if you've listened to this far and you're contemplating what I'm talking about, where this is showing up in your life, that takes courage. So you're already on your journey of transformation. And that is a beautiful thing. So if you're ready to be rigorously honest and you want that support and you don't want to do it alone, I'm here. Okay. So I'm going to put in the chat here how you can get in touch with me. You can go to that link there. I'll also put it up in the comments of this live stream so you'll have access to it. You can schedule a prosperity chat with me. You can download one of my cash flow worksheets, which is an amazing tool that a lot of my clients use when they're just starting on their journey of really wanting to work on their finances and keep track of it. So hit me up. I'm around.